Where am I hearing that kickback? On your screen? Or is that on my end?
I generally don't have anything. I can use headphones if you want.
No, it was mine. I got it. All right, now I'm good. Can you go into that? All right, perfect. So now we got it all set up. Okay. So today, guys, we are going to be going over high ticket sales, B2C, business to consumer. So, more coaches, some consultants do B2C. But what we really want to point out here is like the three main things we see clients struggle with the most. Their biggest, whether they struggle with, they haven't learned, or they have questions. It's usually regarding these three things first and foremost. So we're going to dive in and do a pretty good presentation and hopefully answer all those questions and give you some resources so you guys can increase your sales, your conversion rates, and ultimately the revenues coming into the business, right? So I have Danny on with me today. Danny is our sales manager. He's been our top producer the last few months. And to give a little background before you do an intro, I'm just going to mention a little about what you had told me. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you had never closed a 3K dealer hire prior to working with us. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And I had never closed a deal on a Zoom call.
Really? I didn't remember that second part. That's impressive. So, for instance, I mentioned, in the post I did to go through some case studies, and we'll do that at the end, but there's probably not a better one than yourself, Danny, in terms of, never selling high ticket per se to having a day where you closed over 50K in one day.
Yeah, that's right.
What was the big difference? And what did you learn between day one and day 50K day?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, it was really Jesse helping me. His style was aligned with ethical selling, which I think was aligned with who I am as a person. And ultimately, alignment is the word of the day. It was just finding the gaps, the problems that people were having, and really aligning it with PDocs, and ultimately qualifying in terms of making sure that we could definitely help them. And then instead of trying to sell someone, I just became a problem solver. And that was the big shift for me.
I love it. I was auditing a couple of your calls last week because I oversee our sales team here a little bit and give them some critique. And I saw you had mentioned that on a couple of times, like, I'm just a problem solver. You had mentioned that to the prospect, whether we work together or not, or I try to pitch you anything, pretty much irrelevant. Let's just find the solution to your problem and dig into it. So that's one of the key aspects we're going to talk about here today. Before I dive into it, where would you tell me on a scale of 1 to 10 where you were in terms of confidence selling a high ticket day one working here as opposed to where you're at now?
Oh, like a two in the start for sure. And I'll never give a 10 for anything, but like a 9.5.
Awesome. Oh, that's awesome. Because isn't that a big part? Haven't you found, I've been in sales a long time, and when you're confident in yourself, more so, I think you and I are very similar, and I can sell great, but I can't sell a product I don't believe in. I haven't seen the tangible results. I'm not just going to sell for a buck. I'm going to sell for the impact, the transformation, right? So confidence in both, but yourself in terms of sales is really huge, because once you have the confidence and you can help people make the decision that's best for their future, the whole game changes, right?
Absolutely. And that was another big shift for me, was having those little wins stack up really built up the confidence for me. But of course, having the confidence in what PDocs is doing. And it became more of not sales once again, but just being really convicted and seeing how much we can help. So I got to a point where I now feel obligated. If someone is the right fit, I feel obligated to do everything I can to help them make the right decision. That's another big mental switch for me.
That's great. That's great. We're going to talk about that a little as well, but so true. It's really helping the prospect make the decision for their best interests, right? And sometimes that is just as important, not to make offers and not to sell people, right? It goes both ways.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Great. All right. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to bring up a little document that's going to overview the topics here, and Danny and I will go back and forth and discuss. So you can see that on the screen, Danny?
Yep.
Perfect. Hold on one sec. My computer. There we go. So many tabs open, right? So we're going to talk about making sales and closing whales. And the reason I phrased it that way, whether it's B2B or B2C, and we're going to talk about a little bit of the differences, selling what we call a whale of a client. And in a B2B setting, I would say that's, a 10K client or more that could likely turn into a 100K partner potentially. When it comes to B2C, for myself, I categorize that at about 3K or higher. More so 5K and up, but I think 3K and higher is a pretty good number to really kind of delineate high ticket from lower ticket items. And one thing I see when starting to work with a lot of new clients is people severely undercharging, right? And a lot of it's because of their sales training, lack thereof training, lack thereof confidence. I can't charge 3K for what I do. I'll feel like trying to sell that to somebody. All I'm doing is working with them and coaching them. And A, they're not realizing the impact they're making, and B, they're not realizing that they're probably not working with the quality audience they want because they're charging so low, and it's really probably more so hurting their authority than building. What would you say to that point?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to believe that the value you're providing is worth what you're charging. I think if I'm going to a store or something and I see something that is really cheap, in my mind, I'm questioning like, why? Why is it so cheap? What's wrong with it? And if something is of value, it's going to be priced that way. And I do think that prospects see it the same way.
Goes back to what we've been hearing our whole lives, right? You get what you pay for.
Exactly.
And the older you get, the more and more that rings true, I believe. So the first thing we're going to cover is call structure. Underneath, I'll have a little outline that I'll run through, and I have another document to bring up. But first, I just want to talk about a little bit of the difference between selling B2B and B2C. People get confused there. The only real things that I notice that change, typically speaking, B2B, you're going to have a little more sophisticated of a client. They've already worked with other agencies, other business owners. They have other vendors, subcontractors. They've, brought on VAs, delegated and outsourced tasks, right? So they're going to be more sophisticated. They're going to have a different set of problems than most B2C clients. But more so in B2B, you're going to make it work with numbers. It's not as much about the emotional pain point. Not to say that doesn't come in on occasion, but it's definitely not as much of a factor as it is selling B2C. You need to make it make business sense for them. And if you can line that up for them, which actually Adam showed on Friday's live exactly how you make those numbers work. So if anyone didn't see that, go in that thread and message replay to that one. And before I go on, I'm hoping some of the new members that see this, if you guys aren't aware, and you're not sure exactly how to get the most out of the PDocs experience, all of the curriculum and course and tutorials and modules we have in there, you should hop on a 15-minute blueprint call with a member of our team. If you haven't done so yet and you want some direction and insight as to how to get to your next goal and us kind of map out a bit of a blueprint and what you should really be focusing on now to stay productive instead of busy, just comment blueprint in the comments and we'll get you there. Basically, this is for anyone that hasn't hit those consistent 5-figure months. So if you're a coach, consultant, or new to this group and you're still struggling to hit 10, 20K, 5-figure months, comment blueprint below, meet with a team member and have us build you out the roadmap and show you what you should be focusing on right now to get there. So just a little segue, but I'm going to dive back in here. And B2C is a lot more what we're going to talk about today, right? Today is a B2C training. I just wanted to point out a couple of the differences. B2C is going to be a lot more of a digging into pain points, desires, and really solving problems. You're solving problems on both, but this one you have to solve, and we'll go over this on a couple different fronts. It's almost like they have different doors in their head open when they sit down for a phone call of ways to escape. My objections, how do I get out? And they kind of come in with a little bit on defense, if you will. And our job as we go through our outline, our structure, and how we ask questions and ultimately, give advice, prescribe solutions is really to close those doors as we're going through and just have the option make sense at the end. Do you have anything to tack on to that, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, I think with B2B, ultimately, sales is emotional, right? People make a decision based on emotion. However, with B2B, it's really important to highlight that cost of doing nothing. Mm-hmm. If they don't feel like they're not missing out, if they don't move forward, then things are going to get stalled. B2B can tend to be slower, and you really need to create that gap. B2C, obviously there needs to be a cost of doing nothing, but I find it to be a lot more emotional. I agree with that.
Perfect. Yeah, that was a really good point. You're right, though, because, in B2B sales, that's exactly it. If you can just really, the cost of doing nothing for a B2B client as opposed to B2C is quite a jump, right? So if you have say you're working or talking to an agency doing 60K and they're looking to get to 100K, and your program can help deliver that. Well, the cost of doing nothing and getting the guy there, if he waits 2-3 months, that is probably going to cost him 40 to 60K in additional revenue just from waiting. Because once you get the system down and you scale that first month, it's rinse and repeat. So you make that 3K. Let's say your business jumps 3 to 5K the first month. He was doing 60. We'll use 65. Next month, it jumps probably to 70, 75 because you've implemented and completed more of, this new process. And then by the third month, when maybe he's stalling and about to take action, he's probably already made about 25K, but then he's already got that momentum where it's now going to start to snowball. And every month you're going to see an extra 25K. So that adds up really, really fast. And what you're leaving on the table by delaying 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it is often tens of thousands when it's B2B. So when I talk about call structure, let's discuss this because I put this in the post. Personally, and what we train here is we don't use a sales script. Danny, do you have a script for any of your calls?
Nah, not once.
None of us. None of the guys who started and founded and the owners who've done a lot of sales, and none of our team when we train them. We don't use scripts. We do use outlines or structures. This is an example. There's multiple different ones, and I'll run through two, and we'll just hit the main talking points. But we really want to focus on what each one of these does and why they're in this sequential order and how this can help you structure your sales process. I don't like scripts because we're here problem solving. We're not here to sell. My next topic we're going to cover is solution sales. If I have a script and I'm sticking to it, how is that flexible to this prospect and this prospect with different needs, different desires, different struggles? Unfortunately, it becomes cookie cutter when you get scripts and you can't customize everything to that prospect, that conversation, that niche, all of those little intricacies within the call and that are of significant importance to prospects. So obviously the first thing is the open, right? I just call that the icebreaker. My open, I always like to be nice and light, Hey, Danny, great to connect today. Hopefully I can give you, the best insight and information on today's call. I'm just curious, what part of the world you calling in from? And then they'll come back and you kind of BS a little over, or you connect even to something behind them. I have a picture of a movie, so maybe I would comment on that, or maybe he's got a sports thing. He's a football fan. Just break the ice with something, relational and something that that they have interest in. Then setting the agenda is another word for the pre-frame, right? When you want to set the agenda, that's you building authority, creating the expectations for the call, and also taking the lead, right? That's really the three aspects of the set the agenda or the pre-frame stage. And this is so important because if you don't do this, I'll teach you as we go a little further on. And I think I was just talking to you the other day, but it's hard to rein prospects back in when they get way off in the weeds or, they start talking about personal problems in their grandmother or whatever. People like to talk and you don't want to be rude, but you also have a certain amount of time, right? You might have another sales call, client call. This call was set for a certain block of time for a reason. We all need schedules in business. So if you set the agenda and pre-frame it right and something goes off track, you can rein it back in and say, hey, I mentioned at the top of the call and we're kind of running tight on time, and you can just rein it back, right? So setting the agenda is super important. Everybody should probably do this in a way that is, comfortable with them. But I usually do it with something like, so Danny, I just want you to, understand what to expect on today's call. And at the end, we're going to assess any questions and see if we're a good fit to potentially work together. But what I really want to do is understand where you're trying to get in your business, where you're at now, what's the big gap from getting there, and what have we tried in the past? And probably a little more of the background. How long did it take us to get to where we're at? What have we already tried and hasn't worked or has worked? And that will help me give you the best assessment going forward. Does that sound fair to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with that, just to backtrack slightly, before the open even, the preparation is really important in terms of when you're opening, I consider it, you're inviting someone into your office space. So that first 5 seconds, I find to be really important. So you have to be like confident, warm, but also have the authority. And you can lose the authority within the first 10 seconds if you don't do it right. And I normally don't do calls here. This isn't where I do calls, but I make sure that what's in the background creates an idea of who I am as a person, and that I've got a whiteboard behind me makes it seem like I've got my life together. Like, it's just really important for them to, they pick up on these things subconsciously. Totally. And then in terms of setting the agenda, also really important to prime them for what's coming, because if you don't, I think it can come across as a bit deceptive. Like, oh, I thought we were just having a chat, but now you're trying to sell me something. Yeah. Sorry, continue. Just thought that was.
No, that was really good. I actually should have mentioned that, because you shouldn't be mentioning, in the pre-frame, if everything makes sense at the end of this call and we both think it's a good fit for, us to work together to get you to your goals, I'm going to present you an offer at that point. So that is really good. Another thing, maybe, I shouldn't have overlooked that, but with our system, they should kind of know that getting on the call, because we use the 2-call system and they've come from a triage to Danny. So the specialist that spoke with them should let them know that our advisor will make an offer should it make sense, and they are looking to get going with this, right? So very, very, very good point. And back to your thing about the prep, I didn't really mention that because I dove right into the open. You're very good and diligent about this. You like to go to the prospect's Facebook page and do a little background on them, see what their offer is, see what they like and dislike. Are they sports fan? Are they this or that? Have something to bond with. It lets them know that you showed interest. You didn't just hop on the call and wing it. Oh, Joe, I think you talked to this guy on my team, and I think he mentioned, like, you can come in confident about what you're talking about. And that's another thing Danny does pretty regularly, is he'll watch the triage call from the prospect that he's about to get on a call with, and he'll have the baseline, or at least communicate with the specialist and understand, where this guy's at and his take on, how Danny should help this prospect. So the prep is super important in that aspect. If we dive down to understanding why they're here, that is really, you can start with that vague, and I don't like super vague questions, but in the closing call, when you're doing a strategy session, it is good to give them a chance to open up a little bit and talk. And the understanding why they're here, usually I have to get the baseline, the surface level why they're here, to really dig into the whys behind that, because I think that's really important. So understand why we're here. I'm here to make more money, right? Okay, great. Why is that important to you? Well, I want my wife to be able to quit her day job and take care of little Timmy and get him out of daycare where he's around 30 other kids. And it's just, a hassle. Okay. So it's really important for your wife to be able to quit her day job and stay at home with Timmy. Why is that such a pressing issue outside of the daycare? I get that, you don't want your kid around a bunch of other kids during a pandemic. I mean, it makes sense to me. Is there anything more that goes into that? And you might get the why behind the why, right? So asking that more than once is super important. Usually you're going to get a surface or a symptom level why, the immediate reason, but there's stuff behind that that's going to be super important to you as you're going through the rest of this. Anything to add?
Yeah. Also, in understanding why they're here, I think it ties in also below you have what they want, but I think it's really important to assess and prepare for why exactly are they on the call, but also what are they looking for specifically? Because if you feed someone something that the vehicle that they're not looking for, they're going to resist it. Alex Hormozi, I've been watching him a lot lately and reading his book, $100 million offers. And he tells a story saying that there's this boy and his dog has ticks, and he goes to his grandma and he says, "Grandma, I need to get rid of these ticks on my dog." And she says, "Oh, easy, mijo, just give him some garlic, and he'll eat the garlic, and then it'll seep through the skin, the ticks will fall off." So he goes and tries to give the dog garlic, and the dog turns its head away and doesn't want it. So then he goes back to his grandma and he says, "Grandma, abuela, I don't understand. He's not eating it." And she's like, "Oh, silly mijo, you need to wrap it in the ham." So then he wraps the garlic in the ham, feeds it to the dog, boom, eats it straight away, and the ticks fall off. So oftentimes we don't understand what their ham is. We're so focused on the garlic that we're going to give them. And a lot of the time your service is the same, but the way that you frame it could be entirely different. If someone's coming to me saying, "I really want inbound leads," and I'm talking to them about how to get outbound leads the entire time, you're not going to have a good time. So yeah, super important to prepare to understand not only why, like their deep level why, but what their ham is and what their garlic is.
Yeah, you have to understand the desires to help them get those and make your presentation and your offer, make sense for them to ultimately get to their goal. Then you're going to dive into understanding their business. And this isn't always their business. I should put / transformation, because if you're a weight loss coach or a life coach, you might not be affecting their business, or at least not directly, right? Could be a byproduct of your service. So understand their business or the transformation. And when it's not business, right, you would be digging into more about what you've tried and failed with, how frustrating that is, what type of struggles you've been through in trying to lose weight, right? Or in trying to get over a, whatever it could be for life coaches. They work with a lot of people on their mentality, on, overall mental health issues, things like that. So you really have to understand what they've already tried and why they're so frustrated and why they haven't solved this problem yet. Understanding their business, when it's a B2B offer or even B2C that you're coaching, business clients. You could be coaching life coaches to form a business. So although they're a life coach, you need to understand the business side of it, right? So you can help them get clients, get a marketing system in place, make sales, make revenues. So what you're going to want to understand with that a lot of times is the numbers, the metrics, and the activity that they're putting to get their desired. What's the input to receive the output? You're looking at 10K months. Well, what's your input now? Are you, what are you doing every day? I want to understand and make sure that they're dedicated and motivated, and they don't say, I wake up and I post once on social media, no one comments, so I didn't get anything done. Like, if that's the case, I don't want to work with that guy. Odds are I'm not going to present my offer at the end. But understanding their business as, I put in 2 hours a day to organic messaging. I dedicate an hour at night to follow up. I'm always in constant, groups trying to find problems and offer solutions. All right, so this guy is blocking out chunks of his day for this, for this, for this. He knows all of those activities will ultimately lead him to convos and call bookings. So he's focusing on the right stuff. I can help that guy a lot quicker.
Yeah, nailed it. I got nothing to add.
And then you're going to examine pain points, which is the previous two topics that we talked about, the understanding their why and the deeper whys behind that, and understanding their business, the frustrations, the struggles. You're going to extract a lot of that, and you should be taking notes when you're doing any of these calls, jotting down what's super relevant, their goals, their desires, what they've stuck with, what they were frustrated with, all of the things that are emotional drivers in the conversation or have a tangible effect on you presenting the offer in terms of the deliverables. So examining their pain is really reassessing. You mentioned earlier in the call, it was super important for your wife to get out of work and you need to supplement her income an extra 5K a month or whatever you said that looked like. And we went a little deeper to tell me why. Well, I think I understand exactly where you're coming from. And what I would love to do is show you this example of how I had another client with a very similar problem. We helped him within 30 days be able to make that jump, had his wife quit her job, and they've been way happier since she's been a stay-at-home mom, not having to wake up, run around the house, coffee, kid at school, get to work on time, get home, cook dinner. His wife was just in a total grind. And after that transformation, it was huge. So it's good if you can relate to another client as well, but also really examining their pain. It's going to be more than one pain point most often. And you're going to start with what you think was the most crucial to them, the real driving factor, right?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the prep as well. They'll often reveal a bit of pain in the triage. And I've got everything, all my notes before I even get on the call. So I've got their pain, I've got the gaps that they're facing, the solutions that we provide. It's all tied in when I jump on the call. And I think some people get a little bit weird about the pain concept because it feels manipulative. But ultimately, like if you're a problem solver, you're trying to reduce their pain as much as possible. And we know based on many studies that people are more motivated by avoiding pain than actually having something to gain. So if we're to help them make the right decision, we really need to know what their pain is and how they can avoid it.
Totally. And then we can dive a little more into what they want. You probably did assess that a bit in the understand why they're here, right? But now that you're a little deeper in the conversation, you've examined their pain, you understand their business a little more. Exactly what does this future look to you? How many hours a day are you in your are you working in your business? What revenue goals are we trying to hit? What does this look like to you to have the ideal business? Just close your eyes and tell me, 6 months down the road, everything's worked out perfect. What's your day look like? And what's your team or your revenues look like? I want to hear that from them and really get the bird's eye view of how they view their business. Because I love to customize products and solutions within their vision, right? It's not just going to be I know this works. This is why it works. I want it to work within their vision. So understanding that will help me when I get to presenting a little more of the offer. When we get down to there, the state your offer, it's going to really help me inject the parts that are going to help them get there of my offer, of the tangibles, of the deliverables. So, I like to say my offer doesn't really change, right? My offer, I mean, they tweak a little, they change, but the deliverables and what we do don't really change very much. But what does change almost every sales call, I don't know if I've ever done any two that were the same, is how I'm presenting it. My offer is the same, but I'm presenting it different to every prospect because they have different struggles, pain points. They want different things. And I'm going to highlight the real needle mover or two within my program. I may have 4 things that really help this guy, but which 1 or 2 are really going to stand out and help him understand that we can help him get what he wants and reduce those pains. So I think that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you end up going over 100% and they only really need the 30% highlighted, that last 70% might cloud the vision. Whereas if you can just focus on the real needle mover and what's really going to help them, I think it's a lot more beneficial, and it saves you both time.
Yeah, and you're probably causing more confusion if you start talking about 6 or 8 aspects of your program when you really have to highlight the 2 that are gonna crush it for him. He's gonna be like, wait, you offer all that? I can't even wrap my mind around how that would look in my business, as opposed to 2 big aspects of your program that are going to solve a problem or make an immediate impact in revenues, in transformation, whatever you're offering, right? This is the one people usually don't understand. That's the responsibility phase. And what I want people to, why this is in here, what I want people to think about is, we talked about right off the top, ethical sales. Responsibility means you want to help them make the decision that is best for their future self. That's why you're understanding what they want 6 months out, 3 months, whatever time frame. It doesn't really matter. But what is your most responsible advice and solutions and direction for the prospect to help them get what they want? Be responsible. If it's not you and your program, A, I don't want to make an offer, and B, I would want to refer to the guy that can help best, right? Personally, in this space, working for a lot of other companies, partnering with other ones, having lots of clients, I typically know who can help you if I can't. And if I'm not the best guy, I'd rather direct you to who is the best guy than to fit you into my program. So, what we talked about a little with enrolling bad fits or making your offer to, only the right people. I think it's super powerful to not make offers when you're not the best fit, and especially if you're not certain you can solve that problem or deliver the desire. A lot of unethical companies are just, hey, you got the 10 grand, you can enroll in my program, let's do it. I think I'll be able to help you. Yeah, sure, of course. Let's get you enrolled. We'll worry about it on the back end, right? And that's not how we roll here. Speak to that a little if you'd like, Danny.
Yeah, I mean, I jump from business to business, just looking for an ethical company that wouldn't just enroll anyone and everyone. So that's near and dear to my heart. But hopefully we'd be able to qualify them even before this point in the call. But sometimes we might have missed it and gone through the, half the call and realized, oh man, I'm actually probably not the best fit for them. And when you do that, you're more likely to get a referral anyway, because someone really appreciates when they finally found a company that says, hey, I actually just am not the best fit for you, but I do know someone who can help. They're so much more likely to go to their friends and say, whoa, this company is amazing.
That's great. Yeah, spot on. You're dead right, because so many people, they have respect for you right away, but they appreciate that because not many companies and sales reps will do that. So you're gonna go up in the trust and the likability factor by being so transparent. And again, their best interests. That's what selling ethically is. If you don't have their best interests at mind, you're probably not selling in an ethical manner. So I mixed the close in before you state your offer because I skipped acknowledge the gap on purpose just to talk about this for a sec. Because after I acknowledge the gap, and I'll go into that, I basically assume the close very often, and I'll show you what I mean. So I kind of assume the close before I state the full offer. It's a little backwards in most people's mind, and I'll clarify that. But also, we wanted to take the close aspect and talk about it all by itself. So it's a little later in the presentation, because although the close is part of your call structure, your objective, your outline, it is also kind of a beast of its own. It's kind of its own skill set and its own little nuances to closing. So I almost want to, I made that a topic of its own because it shouldn't just be talked about for 30 seconds like some of these other ones. But acknowledging the gap is really just, now we've done all the assessment phase. We understood why they're here, dug into their business, what their desires are, dug into the whys below the surface level problems, right? And now we're going to acknowledge the gap, as in, this is where you're at, Danny. This is where you want to be. And we're going to show him when we present the offer that our vehicle can help him get from A to B, right? This is where you're at. This is where you want to be. Well, my offer is exactly for people in that predicament. I'd love to walk you through and show you how that would be, relevant for your business and how you could really get the same results as some of my other clients. And that's where you go into the offer presentation. I'm not going through the presentation part today. We could do that a whole nother time. A, it's a little too lengthy. And B, I would hope you guys know how to present your offer, because nobody should know it better than you. I definitely can't sit here and pitch your offer. I don't know your offer. But when I get with new clients, I help them build out one real quick. And within one session, I know it well enough where I pitch it back to them and present it. And I record it so they see how I do it. And I basically sell them their own offer on that call. And they're always blown away. They're like, you didn't even know my offer 45 minutes ago. You built it and just sold it back to me. And then I'll send them that recording and they can break down and transcribe all that, how I did it, and then inject their own personality and their own expertise. Because I gave an overview, but again, I shouldn't know their offer as well as them, especially in 45 minutes. But acknowledge the gap. We're going to talk about that when we get down to the solution sales as well. But that's really what it is, right? This is where you're at. This is where you want to be. My program can fill that. And again, you want to highlight the one or two aspects of your program that really fill that gap, not 6, 8 different things.
Yeah. And I think another part of the acknowledging the gap that I like to do is like, this is where you are, this is where you want to be. We're the vehicle, like this is the vehicle to get you there. But if you don't, what's your plan? What are you going to do? And they often have absolutely no answer for what they're going to do. And they widen their own gap and realize, I need to get in this car. I need this vehicle.
Yep. Very well said. Very well said. So then after you would present the offer, I put shut up there as just kind of a joking thing, but it's also true. Sometimes people just sabotage. They'll state their offer, be a small hesitation, then they'll go in and, oh, wait, but right now I'm doing 10% off, or they tried it, and then you seem desperate, right? It's like, if they're not all in or didn't fully understand it, shut up and wait for their objection or their question, and let them tell you what part of the program didn't make sense, or that they got to talk to their spouse, or whatever the case may be. But don't assume and don't feel desperate. As soon as you state your offer, and at the end, does that make sense to you? Can that help you get from where you're at to where you want to be? Shut up at that point. If you get a little hesitation or they're thinking about it, awkward silences aren't the worst thing in the world, but don't just get desperate and be like, oh no, he's quiet, he hates my program, I got to jump in with a discount or a promo or rein this back in, because that's going to push more people off than attract them, for one, and desperation shows very quickly. So again, I kind of put that in a little humorous, but also I've listened to so many calls where they state their offer, they get a little hesitation, they feel like they got to jump in, and they start and they just shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, I think before you even get to the close as well, it's super important to really get a gauge of where they're at. Like, it could be as simple as saying, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, or I mean, sometimes I've even said, like, I'm an Aussie, I can take it. If you don't like this, let me know. Yep. But I want to know where they're at. Like, if I jump straight to the close before asking if they have any questions, I ultimately really want to get the objections out before I'm talking about the price. Because if you're just answering questions, overcoming objections before the price, they're really small. But once you say, and it's 15K, and then the objections come up, that's not a fun time. Even if your program's like $1,000, once money's involved and they know, it just, their objections become so much more like, kill the monster while it's small, basically.
What Danny's talking about is temp checks, which we teach to our prospects and clients as well. I wouldn't say it's its own part of the call structure, but it's super important. And you should have 2 or 3 times within your call structure, how you like to lay yours out, where you are doing that. I fully agree. Probably around what they want, at that point, you can probably do a temp check. And then after acknowledge the gap is a great time as well. But that is a really good point. So I'm glad you brought that up. So let's talk about solution sales. I put in the post today, as self-explanatory as that term is, solution sales, I get asked questions all the time about it. And to me, it's so cut and dry, and I've done it for so long. I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, what do you mean? Are we solving problems? So how do we do this, right? First is how well we assess and acknowledge the gaps. So, we talked about that as one of the, one of the things in the call structure. But what I really want to do is dive into not only accessing and acknowledging, but then understanding how we can get them there and why they haven't got there yet. That's super important. So we can't plug gaps and fix gaps if we don't assess those right. And how do we do that? by asking the proper questions on sales calls. The biggest flaw is people are asking the wrong questions, and they're asking questions without necessarily a purpose, an objective. They're just asking because they were trained that. Their script says that. It's the flow of conversation, but they're not always asking questions based off the previous reply. Do you actually listen to your prospects? And is your question in flow, or is it just the next thing you want to cover? And that's gonna give them a bad feel. They just talked about this, and you go into your next question, which has nothing to do with what they just said, when your next question should be following up or diving in deeper to that. You know what I mean? So to assess and acknowledge and fully understand, a lot of listening comes in. Too many people talk too much on sales calls. Ultimately, if you go listen back to one of your calls, the prospect should have more time to speak than you. You should be doing more listening. Maybe only in the last 10 minutes, that doesn't ring true of the call. But outside of that, they should really, you give them a little bit of rope and you tug them back in if they go, way off course. But outside of that, that's super important, and really asking the right questions. So it's part of the frameworks and stuff and structures we teach to our closers internally, to clients we work with in their businesses. And elaborate, or if you have anything to add about that.
Yeah, I think my mom always said, and I'm sure most people's did, like you need to listen to understand, not to respond. And that's so true in a sales call. If you're in flow and you're just listening and really trying to solve somebody's problem, it'll come naturally what to say. But if you're sitting there analyzing, like, what's the best thing I can say to move them on to the next part, it's going to come out calculated, and your prospect's going to feel that as well.
That's exactly why I use that word, because we could have put hearing or listening to their needs, right? But understanding is totally different. Sometimes, and very often, people are just listening to respond. They're not understanding, they're not processing. They already have their next sentence in their head before you've even finished talking, right? So that's not coming from a place of service, and that's not worrying about the prospect's best interests. That's not your priority. If you're already, assessing where you're going next with the conversation, you need to understand where they need it to go. You can lead the conversation differently, but if you don't understand where they need it to go and how you're going to present a solution, good luck, right? That means you were just listening and hearing, not fully understanding. And then what I like to say, right? We assessed and acknowledged, we understood, now we can prescribe. So think of yourself as a doctor on these calls. Let's say you have more than one program. You can prescribe the solution. Hey, what we do is this, this, and this, but you know what really makes the most sense for you? This program we have right here, and let me explain to you why. Right. So prescribing the solution keeps you in authority. It keeps it simpler because you are the expert here, especially if it's your own business or you're representing a company. They're offering what they do very well, or what you're doing yourself. So you are the best person to prescribe the solution, right? You shouldn't be giving them options and choices. That's just shooting yourself in the foot. They're like, oh, I have 2 programs, 2 different price points. Let me go do some thinking and see which one makes more sense. And by then they jumped on a call with another coach. They got closed because this guy only presented one option, showed them how it made sense, and the guy didn't have to go think about it. So you could be killing yourself. You should be prescribing a solution within your program. And if you only have, one core offer, which is totally fine, odds are, I don't know how you have your offer structured if you don't work with us, but we structure our offer with core deliverables, pillars, phases, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't really matter the term. And generally speaking, one of those core foundations within your offer, the deliverables, is going to be the solution. It might not be your whole program. So then the other stuff is bonuses. That's how you over deliver. Like I told you on the call, this is what you need, and this is my program. Then when your program also does efficiency and how to be more productive, and you're teaching that in your program, or you're teaching a follow-up process, although what you prescribed was something to get him leads, and that's what he needed. You listened, you prescribed that. But now if we throw in a follow-up process, that's just icing on the cake, and we over-delivered, right? So prescribing the solution is super important, and you should be the one making that decision. You shouldn't be putting the ball back in the prospect's courts should you have multiple offers to present. You should, by going through this whole form, that is the point where you're understanding, acknowledging, assessing, and then at the end, when you state your offer, now you should have all the data, ammunition, talking points to be able to prescribe the right solution. If not, you're not doing your due diligence. You have anything on that?
Yeah, I think that's something I definitely struggled with in the beginning. It was this prescribing part and being more of a doctor versus a friend. And I think it's really important that there's a structure of authority. Like you can help someone without being their buddy. And people don't really spend a lot of money buying programs from their buddies either. So if you're prescribing a proper solution, you're the doctor. There's a reason why when you go to the doctor's office, they don't shake your hand. It's not just because they're clean. It's because they are the authority and they're treating you as their patient. And like, I really do like the prescribing as a doctor. It's helped me a lot.
Great. And the ways to do this are, be 100% ethical in your process, only present offers that make sense, that can deliver, and you think you're the best person to deliver. I also like to use visual sales. This is something we teach a lot. I saw on one of your calls last week, you did that very well, the visual sales. So that is really powerful too. I put in my little, post about today's training. Did you ever hear the phrase, a picture is worth 1,000 words? Yeah, exactly. Because some people, the visual is what they need for it to make sense. Also, they can process a lot more in a visual presentation that will save you probably 20 minutes of explaining what you could run through in 5 minutes of visually showing. I have some videos and trainings on this. So again, if you're listening, if you're watching live or the replay, and you would like to understand a little more about visual sales, we're going to talk about it for another minute here, but just comment visual sales below. I'll get you over a little training where I walk you through what I've done to close some deals. And I think you saw this. One of them I got on and I did a visual sell. And the first line I said to this guy was, I'm not going to make you an offer. I have nothing to sell you. And I got to the end. He goes, how much? I go, I told you I wasn't going to sell you anything. He goes, I want to know the price. I want in. So I ended up closing him on that deal, or he had to go move some money around. He messaged me a day or two later and we processed it, whatever it was. But I just want to show you how our program can help. And what I showed him in particular with us was knowledge gaps and how that would rock his world in terms of messaging, new entry points into the marketplace, into conversations, content and angles he can use in his ads, in his VSLs, all the ways that he's reaching his prospects, right? So when I'm visually selling, again, I know the couple components of my program that are absolute game changers, that we do better than anyone or no one else is doing, or they're going to be what's going to blow this guy's mind. And that's what I'm going to visually show to him, right? You have anything to add there?
Yeah, the brain is just really lazy. And if you're constantly just speaking and you're blending in with every other sales call that they've ever been on, they're just going to associate you with every other sales call that they've ever been on. Whereas if you have visuals that are exciting and sexy and keep them engaged, you're going to have a much better chance of them retaining what information you're giving them and them actually wanting to move forward. So I think visual selling should be a key component of pretty much every call.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I could have covered with state the offer, you know what I mean? But I knew I had it listed down here as well. But that's when you would be doing it, when you're presenting the offer. And you don't want to, I think it's much more engaging if they have something to look at and you're running them through stuff. And that kind of dives into the next thing. It doesn't always have to be monetarily, but this part, numbers don't lie. So it could be data, right? It could be metrics. Right now you're targeting the first 3%. If we could get you another 11% of the marketplace, imagine if we could, market and prospect to 14% of the market as opposed to 3. That's a 3.3 increase or whatever it is. And if you have the numbers drawn out, you can actually make it all make sense to them about how implementing your process can change from 8 call bookings to 28 a month, or from 10K in revenue to 22K. And numbers don't lie again. So when you're presenting data and metrics, especially from proven systems or past clients, people that have said, hey man, I started with Ray, I made 10K. Now we're doing 100K. Like, those numbers, they don't lie. Like, this guy, his bank account, what he brought in isn't going to change subjectively. No, I used it right. Subjectively. Correct.
You did that again. You did that the other day too.
I mix up those two too often.
Yeah, I think it's really important to appeal to both the left and right side of the brain. So if you've got visual, if you've got the monetary, the number side of things, and case studies all within the presentation, regardless of whether they're left or right brain wired, you're going to have them engaged and have a good presentation for them.
I think this is always applicable, but more so in B2B. B2B, it's going to be more about making sense. You're going to have a lot more analytical thinkers that need to see the metrics, that need it to make sense before they pull the trigger. It's a little different the way they're wired, and rightfully so, because they're operating off numbers. They have KPIs, they have expenses, they have overhead. So if it's not going to make sense to them, why would they pull the trigger, right? We need to make it make sense. And a lot of people can do that visually, and they need to see it, or they need the metrics or the data to feel comfortable about making the decision to work with you, to buy from you. So couple ways to look at that. It's still certainly relevant in B2C as well. I'm not saying it's not. I just think it's a little more applicable and more of an actual needle mover in, do they make a decision today? Do they ultimately buy? I think that may be the key component. When I would lean more on B2C, I think it's more about the visual aspect, which they do go a little hand in hand. But I mean more about like showing the game changers in your program and how that's going to help them get to the next level. Much more important B2C, where this guy, he wants to see the metrics, he wants to see the numbers, he wants to see the data, and he wants to see it make sense. And 3 months out, he wants to have projections. If he doesn't hit them, he could say, your program didn't live up to its needs, blah, 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 or you guys smashed it. I projected this. We actually went above and beyond what we thought. This program's all I've ever wanted. I don't need another coaching program. I love hearing that. But yeah, so the monetary aspect, we're running kind of short on time, so we'll dive through this, and we won't expedite it and skip anything. But I really want to talk about the 3 main things in terms of the close that I see people struggle with, or when I'm auditing calls. These are the places where people all of a sudden, it's funny, I've talked to some clients, listen to their calls. And when they get to that financial point of the call and they're ready to ask for money, it's like all of a sudden they get timid. Their voice changes in tone, in inflection, and it comes off that way, right? It's perceived to your prospect. Those body language, voice inflections, the amount of confidence you had the whole way, and then you got to finance and you just kind of shrivel up like this small little guy. So you're shooting yourself in the foot. Finances are not as intrusive as you think when you're trying to come from a place of service and make the best recommendations and prescribe a solution, right? It's not like these should be with all of our offers. I don't care if it's B2C, B2B, monetary, life transformation, lifestyle, mental health. These are all an impact and a value being delivered, right? It's a service being delivered with a value to it. So you shouldn't be hesitant to charge for the value you're delivering to the market, because 9 out of 10 times with anyone that we enroll, the impact and the transformation they're making in the long run are much more. So this should be an investment, not an expense. Right? Finances. If I'm going to invest in something, I'm going to look around and make a smart investment. Never going to hesitate. If I'm going to have an expense, it better be worth it. It comes kind of back to liabilities and assets, a little different in this sense. But these folks, by the time you get to the point of the close, they should know and be looking at it in their mind as an investment, not an expense, or else that becomes tricky. I would love to hear you give a quick little role play, how you go into finances with clients most often.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on that note, I think the way that you present the actual offer itself is super important, because you're saying that you've heard audits where our clients are literally like, they sound scared, and it really does come across. It shows that you're not that confident in your program, even if you are. So regardless of how much it costs, like I want to be looking them dead in the camera. Like if it's on a Zoom call, like looking dead in the camera and saying, yeah, awesome. And that's the best part. It's just XYZ, whatever it is, 3K, 5K. If it's 100K, I do the exact same thing. That's the best part. Like it's just 100K, because they've told you this is what they want. Like you've asked them, does it make sense? Yes. Okay, perfect. So as long as we can make this make sense financially, you're in. Yeah, absolutely, man. Okay, well then why would I hesitantly ask them, I mean, hey, it's 10K and we can do a 3-pay or a weekly payment or whatever. Like that's where the assumptive close comes in. And I think it's really, really important. On your point, in terms of opening up, talking about finances, do you mean like actually going into their finances?
No, I'm not going to go through that whole walkthrough. I mean, how you kind of broach the topic, and how you actually present, like when they say, okay, Danny, once you've done that 1 to 10 at the end, right? 1 to 10, can you see this program being the solution to your problem, and where do you fall on that scale? Oh man, I'm a 10. I think this program is like, where's this been my whole life? This is what I've been looking for. How much is it, Danny?
Oh, that's awesome, man. So basically, if we can make this line up financially, you're in. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, if that makes sense, like I said, I've been looking for a program like this, and I didn't even know something existed till this presentation. So thanks for shedding a little light on some things for me that I didn't know were out there. But yeah, I mean, if the finances make sense, if I can't afford it, I can't afford it, right? But if that makes sense, I'm all day.
Of course, man, it has to line up financially. And look, Ray, that's actually the best part. In order to do this with us, it's literally just 10K USD, and we're able to accept debit or credit. What would work best for you?
Just 10K, huh? Well, I guess everybody sees 10K different, right? You see it as just 10K. I see it as my savings from the last 6 months that I busted my hump for. But I busted my hump and saved because I wanted to invest in my business. So that is something I can do today. Now, is there something we can work out? So maybe I could do a 2-pay or something where I'm not digging into, every last penny, because that's about what I have in savings to the T. And I would rather have a little safety net for the first month or two while I'm going through the program. So I'm a little hesitant, that I can make it work, but I'm a little hesitant to do it all at once. Does that make sense?
I totally hear you, man. Look, I'm not wanting to put your family out, or the last thing I want to do is make finances an issue. So look, we can just split it up into 2 payments. That way it would just be 5K today and then 5K in 30 days. And based on what you've said, you're confident that if we can get you an extra 10 leads within that first month, you said you'd be able to close 2 of them. And with our systems and frameworks, I definitely agree with that. So with you selling at 3K, that's going to give you 6K within the first month. So that'll put you in the green to cover the very first installment, and then in the green moving forward to cover the next. So with that 2K, that sounds like the best option for you.
Yeah, I could do that. I would pull the trigger today. And that was my thought process too. If I'm investing 5 now with what I have for a foundation and what you guys are going to be giving me in terms of coaching and frameworks and strategies, I'm positive I can make that back in the first 30 days myself. So yeah, we're on the same page there. Let's pull the trigger. I can do it on my debit today, and then boom. So
perfect. You can go grab that card.
Yeah, there's a good. So I didn't give him like too many objections. All I said is I can't do 10K today. Let's talk about. I'll go through a few and see if you either agree with me or you want to add on to this. But the most common objections I see, let's just leave finances alone for now, because Danny just said, and that's how you approach it. If this makes sense, financially, you're all for this. That already eliminates the obstacle, the objection of finances. Now you still might have logistical stuff, and we could do another, training, or we have some resources about that. I don't want to go too in the weeds about that, because that's not something we're going to walk through in 3 minutes or less. But the common objections I usually see is partner spouse objection, right? I need to talk it over with a partner spouse. Sometimes it's just, and this is more of kind of a brush off, I just need time to think about it. It all sounds good, but I just need time to think about it. Like that one is a total brush off, and you need to dive into why something's not making sense now, or you didn't build up the cost of inaction and the angst, or you didn't present enough value where they're excited at the end. They're more, when you get that body language, that tone, and yeah, I need to look into it. I'll follow back with you next Monday. That guy ain't following up with me next Monday. If anything, I'm hounding him and lucky if he's even reading my messages. So, those are a couple of the most common. I'm not going to use finances. We'll use the spouse. I need to think about it. And the other one is, that we get a lot is I've invested in other programs before and I've been burned, right? There's I think those are the 3 most common I see. I love that one. I can always twist it to my favor. And I can make it make sense to them too. Like I'm not twisting it in my favor. I'm showing them they have a little different perception on it. But that also tells me that they believe in themselves. They're willing to invest in their business. Like there's a lot of key indicators when they've invested in other programs that is just reinforcing this is your ideal prospect. What do you have to say on the main objections you see?
Yeah, well, with the being burned before, I genuinely I'm no longer a salesperson. I'm a problem solver, and based on that objection, I've become a therapist as well. I'm just constantly walking people through that one, and I totally feel for them, because I've been burned in the past. But ultimately, I really need to help them realize, hey, it's really shit that someone's burned you in the past. The marketplace can just be corrupt. People are just constantly trying to get you into their programs, regardless of whether they can help you or not. And that's why at the beginning of the call, I said, this call will end in 10 minutes if I don't think that we're the right fit for each other, because I really do want to help people, and I'm only going to work with the right people. Ultimately, it's horrible that you've been burned in the past, but you told me that you can't do this by yourself. So if you let them hold you back from being where you want to be, how many more times are they going to burn you? Right. And then it's really, they want to join because they need to prove to themselves that they're ready to make this leap, that they can overcome having been burnt in the past, because really it makes the person who burnt them the enemy, and we're the solution. So I think it's a really genuine way to do it, because it walks them through mentally just, hey, look, if you don't, if you let this stop you from investing in yourself, like it's going to be a slow ride to get to where you want to be, right?
Yep.
But
Yeah.
ultimately, I think just with objections, it's really don't fight them on it. Like agree with what you can. Really genuinely listen to where they're coming from, because they might give an objection, but it's just a brush off. It's something totally different. So I think the most important thing is to get to the emotion behind the objection, not try to solve it with logic, but really understand where they're coming from. People are afraid to make the wrong decision, and totally makes sense why that's the case.
We talk about when it comes to ejections, diagnosing them, and understanding this. We call it RBO, right? Was that objection just a reflex? Like they kind of panicked and 10K, oh my God, and it's like a reflex objection. Is it a brush off? Like that's when they left one of the doors open. They're like, all right, I got this out. I'm going to use an excuse and get off this call, right? So you need to kind of diagnose that. And then the last one, an actual obstacle, is something that could be an actual thing you guys have to work through. But the first two are just either panic mode or, okay, it's my internal, warning going off saying, get off this call or else I'm going to end up pulling out my credit card and spending the money. So they're like almost, again, they've set themselves like that in the beginning. So a lot of times when you get that kind of brush off one, it's because earlier in the call you didn't always close all those doors by going through this, right? You left them out, so they kind of panic, and that's their thing. So reflexes and brush offs, you just kind of got to overcome really quickly. You don't even really pay much attention to them. I'm not saying disregard them, but you don't focus on them. Now, an actual objection or something logistically that you need to work through, and that's a discussion. So that's a big difference. People don't think about that, especially on the spot on sales calls. They don't realize, was that a reflex brush off, or, oh, that's how I come back with it. Like if you just think that through your head when you get to the end, oh, I see why you did that. Okay, now I know how to tackle it, instead of spending 20 minutes on something that was a quick little reflex panic where you could have come over it, and they probably don't even mention it again. If you overcome it right and you just kind of barrel through it, usually a reflex objection, you can just kind of barrel right through and get the same point again. And they're not going to have that reaction again because it was kind of a panic reflex because you said a number that didn't sit well with them, or, whatever the case may be.
And we're all hardwired that way. Like how many times have you gone into a store and you know what you're looking for and you don't know where it is, and they say, hey, can I help you with anything? And you're like, no, I'm just browsing. Like we're just hardwired to avoid salespeople, and your prospects are too.
Why do you think, Danny, I'll ask you why do you think I listed this as being an important part of the close process?
Oh, I think it's extremely important. If somebody doesn't know what the next steps are, then they're walking into the unknown. I think Taki Moore says that if it's like having a black box, like you have a box and it's got a hole in it and you're asking someone to put their hand in it and they don't know what's inside, are you going to put your hand in that box?
Not
No,
likely.
definitely not. Also with expectations, really important to set realistic expectations so that you can under promise and over deliver. Really going to help with the retention rate.
And the other reason that that's there and super important to me, first off, I always focus more in any business I've worked for, or, now ones that I've owned and run and manage, the client experience and the customer journey. And if on the close, my sales team or myself, if I'm taking calls, aren't making that clear to the prospect, that's a big problem in terms of their overall satisfaction and journey with my company, my offer, my solution. More importantly, that's when buyer remorse comes in. They get off the call and they're like, I don't even know what my next steps are. He didn't send me any curriculum. Oh, I got 3 days to cancel that transaction. Well, if I don't get anything from these guys over the weekend, I'm just going to cancel on Monday because, I pulled the trigger. The sales guy was really good. It sounds good, but I don't have any clarity. I don't have any direction. So it's keeping them, again, clear on their path and their next action steps. And also they should have something to consume right after they enrolled, a welcome pack, an onboarding pack. Maybe you just have an intro video you send them. Hey, welcome to my thing. Here's the login to your Kajabi portal. Boom. Now they have some stuff to log into. They have direction, they have content, they have trainings, they have modules. But if you're just like, oh yeah, let me take your payment today. Cool. Well, our onboarding process starts next week. You'll hear from our top fulfillment coach. Thanks, Bob. Bye. Like that payment's probably going to be canceled when you wake up Monday morning. So it's good to set this because it's going to really eliminate buyer remorse. That's important from the sales side of things and from the revenue side. For me, it's a little more important on the customer journey, because in the long run, that's what really helps retention, referrals. Them coming back, let's say they finish your 90-day course, you did everything, you set expectations and you over delivered. Hey, Ray, what's your next program look like? That one was phenomenal. The expectations, the onboarding process was seamless. I'd love to follow up with you guys and get your more, high level stuff that helps you do, re-enrolls and tack on either monthly retainers with clients longer, or have them opt into upsells and additional packages down the road. Great. Well, we hit the full hour. The last thing I'm going to do is I'd love to offer one more resource. So what did we offer in the beginning? The blueprint call. If you guys mentioned blueprint, you want to speak to our team members on how to best, implement PDocs within your business and get results, right? Let's focus on the right things. We talk about this all the time. You can be focusing on the right thing at the wrong time, or the wrong thing. Doesn't matter if you're the right time or not, if you're focused on the wrong thing. But that's really important, because I'll give you guys one super basic tip, right? If you're early on, let's say you're under 10K months and you're early on, and we won't even go into the confidence about what you're charging, if you're charging what you're worth or not. But the only two things you need right now, there's only two things you need right now in your business. So focus on prospects and sales. You need people to talk to, conversations, a feedback loop, booking appointments, and you need to close deals and make revenues. You don't need your funnel. You don't need your website. You don't need your Facebook group. You don't need any of that stuff right now. They're all useful. They have their own relevance. They're bells and whistles that you add on to the online business. The bread and the butter, the meat and potatoes is prospects and sales. If you don't have those, you don't have a business. So if you're unsure what to focus on, which one of those do you not have now? Do you not have both? Because it starts with prospects. You can't make sales without them. Do you have prospects and you're not closing deals? Hopefully this helped. If not, comment sales training below. And outside of the visual one, which would have been commenting visual or visual sales training, we're going to send you an overview and a lesson that we give to some private clients that's actually in our paid vault only. And I think that's the first time I've offered this one for free. So if you're got some prospecting down, you're getting in conversations, great, get sales training. If you have nothing going, focus on that aspect first. And there's all the resources in our group that you should have prospecting down by the end of the week if you're really dedicated to it. You have the resources, everything you need in there, and you have our team you can reach out to at any time for next steps. What should I be focusing on? Can you guys help me get to the next level? Are we a good fit to work together? Maybe we look at that. But however we can help, right? We're here doing these free lives every week to deliver value and solve problems. We didn't make any offers. Anything I said that, I offered you in this, nothing cost a penny. It was all free resources or free advice. And it's really, we benefit when you guys win. If you get our free trainings, you go through our free curriculum and our free masterminds, and you close 10K in deals. Well, when you want to get to 20K a month, who's the best person to help you? And if these guys did this and me for free, what the hell am I going to get when I pay them to work with them, right? So, it helps us, but it's again, out of doing things what's in the best interest of the prospect, and ultimately being ethical, right? You got anything else you want to wrap up with?
No, I think that's about it. I've just enjoyed this because I love geeking out about sales, so it's been fun.
Yeah, I mean, this was the basic overview, and this is really valuable. With each topic we talked about here, what we do when we teach Danny and our team internally or clients, we dive into each one of these with frameworks, all kinds of different, tools, visual call recordings, role play sessions with each other. We do objection handling internally and do all that. We have a lot more depth, but if you guys don't understand the overview and why these are important and how you can throw something different into your sales process instead of the same old boring way of piece of content to a chat bot that pre-qualifies to a 60-minute call, and I'm going to make them offer regardless because I want to make 5K today. Like, that way is dying, and if you guys don't adapt, you're going to die with the old way. So we're trying to show you some new ways, some cutting edge ways, and more importantly, you'll hear us reiterate this a ton: stay ethical. If you ever want to, if you want to stay in business, your reputation can't always be repaired. You screw somebody over and that could come back to you tenfold with who knows how it gets blasted in social media, right? But it's not going to be good for you. If you stay ethical, you never got to worry about it. I made this guy an offer because I know I could help him. Boom. No, you're never going to offend or tick anybody off doing that. So again, this should be a really good overview on the things you can focus on. And solution sales. where that's going to help people. The one thing I'll touch back on is what Danny said when people were presenting and they tiptoed around money because they didn't have confidence in their program. Actually, what I've seen is sometimes they have confidence in the program. They don't have confidence they can sell, and they feel icky, a bad stigma with sales, right? They picture some used car man, you know, salesman selling you a lemon that's going to die 20 days after you drive off the lot, and they just have a bad, but let's think about it, folks. Sales help you get what you want, like anything. I mean, this pen I'm writing, I couldn't take notes if somebody didn't sell me this pen. Maybe it wasn't a salesman. Maybe I walked in and got it, but a salesman sold it somewhere. He sold it to the retail store where you bought it. Everything that you have that you loved, you love your new car, you love a new bed, somebody sold it to you. And what did they do? They solved your problem or gave you a great product. They didn't screw you over. So when you're selling with solutions, you shouldn't be feeling icky about it. And again, so I've seen that people struggle with that total confidence they could deliver results, but still didn't feel confident talking about money because they felt it was taboo. It's, you know, I got to walk around on eggshells and be really careful when I'm talking about money with this person because it's so intrusive, when that's not the case. When you're coming from a place of service and you're trying to get them to where they want their dream life in 6 months, right? Responsibility again. So I dragged on a little longer, but hope to see some comments in the chat below. Meet with our team, get some of our cool resources, and go close some damn deals, guys. Later.